That's why Carolina's in Chapel Hill and USC's in California. And the university in this state always has been, always will be, Clemson. Print that, tweet that.
And I hope they come in here undefeated. That's what I told you before the game. Our team believes. Our team believes. They got heart. We got greatness in us. They say we can't do it. What they say now?
Down go the champs. Auburn's 17-game win streak comes to an end.
We got greatness in us. So I told them, you got greatness in you, but you got to make a decision to be great. They made a decision to be great today. And I couldn't think of a better place to end the streak. It's that battle. South Carolina, baby.
And now it's time for TigerNet Talk, presented by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty.
They got the coaches back, and they have each other.
Oh yeah, welcome into another edition of TigerNet Talk. I'm your host, Lawton Swan. Thank you so much for being here. My goodness, has a lot happened over the past week. What was it? Last Wednesday, we took the week off, and we probably shouldn't have, because such big news occurring at Clemson University as it was released that the rock, of course, had been vandalized. Tremendous news. I know some people out there, maybe those people who aren't Clemson fans, don't understand the significance of the rock. But if you're a diehard Clemson fan or a diehard college sports fan, you certainly should. We'll talk about that. Plus, Clemson recruiting continues on an upward path, if you will. I tell you what, you've got to enjoy the job that Coach Dabo Swinney and his staff have done. Jeff Scott, the recruiting coordinator for this staff, tremendous in what they've been able to do the past few seasons, and certainly going to give you some thoughts on some of that as well. Plus, we're just thankful to be back with you, to be honest with you. I know every once in a while I need that day off, that week off, that one break to get a little vacation time in, and we did get some vacation in, which was nice. Got a chance to relax. When the weather gets a little bit too hot, it won't be quite as fun, but it's been so nice, and I hope that you've all been able to enjoy it too with your family. Let me tell you how you can take part in the program, because we would certainly love to have you with us here on the show. 803-450-0086. That's 803-450-0086. It is located right here below us if you're watching the show live on ClemsonSportsTalk.com or on TigerNet.com. And I want to thank those guys over at TigerNet for putting us on the front page. Also, if you want to email us, Clemson81@gmail.com. That's Clemson81@gmail.com. Tweet to us. We're at Clemson Sports, or hashtag TNTalk. All one word. Put that in, and that'll come right to us as well. We've got our Twitter feed open. We're watching for you to give us some insight on what you got to say. If you're in the chat room, be sure and send your questions to the screen queue. We can definitely talk about those, or put them in the chat room. If I catch them, we'll talk about them. But thank you so much again for being here. So many ways you can take part with us. That's the one thing we want to be, is the most interactive show out there. Well, let's start with The Rock. And I'm not talking about Dwayne Johnson, who was one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, but The Rock, Howard's Rock, sitting atop the hill at Clemson, one of the icons, or one of the iconic symbols in all of college sports, vandalized in early June. And it's such a disappointment for Clemson fans, because you obviously know the significance of this rock. Now, there will be detractors who will say, well, it was a doorstop for a certain amount of seasons, and Coach Howard just said, get that thing out of there, and it was certainly placed upon a pedestal. But the difference became when you start talking about the magic, maybe, or the significance of the rock, and Frank Howard saying, if you're not going to give 110%, keep your filthy hands off it. And what that rock has become, not just in Clemson fans' minds, but I think in the minds of fans across the country. And that's why you saw a lot of support from people out there. That's why you saw a lot of support from people who maybe live in Southern California, people who live in Texas, North Dakota, who weren't Clemson fans, but were saying this symbol of college football has been scarred in some way. And people don't like that, because, and I know it's hard for you as a Clemson fan to maybe feel like this item that is so entrenched in your blood, that belongs to you, really belongs to more than you. It belongs to college football. That's the type of tradition that the Rock has become. There are few traditions like it in all of college football, and rarely is there one that goes as unprotected as the Rock does. Now, if you flash back to 1992, of course, we all know that there was some vandalism to the Rock that occurred back then as well, the week of the Clemson South Carolina game. Since then, the Army ROTC at Clemson does a fantastic job of guarding the Rock. The week of the South Carolina game, you know, they take like a baton, and they're a big steel baton or something, and they're hitting that steel drum right there to just make some racket and have a good time, I guess, guarding it 24 hours a day for that week. And you look at the situation that Clemson's in, and there have been a lot of scenarios posed by people about what Clemson should do to protect the Rock permanently. Should there be security on it? Certainly there should be cameras on it, a shock-proof glass protector. I even saw some people talk about a subterranean vault, and that was one that has really been of peak interest, I think, for a lot of people. Matter of fact, I was down at Fripp Island the other day and ran into a fella, Fred Pinion, big Clemson fan, Fred, and we were talking about this, and he was saying that the subterranean vault idea was just, he thought was an amazing idea. But we've got to do something. I think the athletic department clearly has to address it. And if you don't put in significant features, whether that's sinking the Rock into the ground, which would be totally cool, and having it come out of the ground with smoke and whatever else you've got going on. If you don't figure out something else, it's almost like, I'm going to compare this to a very touchy subject for a lot of you out there, terrorism. And in our country's history, there haven't been too many threats outside of domestic threats against our country. But when something does happen like 9/11, naturally we ramp up security. We get all fired up about security. You start not allowing any types of lotions or gels or liquids on the airplanes, and little knives and I don't know, fingernail files or whatever aren't allowed. And then years go by, and sadly, what do we start to do? People say, well, my liberties are being restricted, so we start to get loose. Maybe we get loose enough to some point where another tragedy happens. Now, comparing the Rock being damaged to the incidents at 9/11, there is no comparison in the damage that was done there, and I would never go there. But where I am going is that as time passes, as time goes by, 20 years from 1992, we got a little lax. Sure, there was a nice glass or plexiglass box around the Rock, but it wasn't protecting the Rock. And what can you do to protect it? There are certainly a lot of people who don't want it moved, because if you move the Rock, if you were to take it and remove it from Memorial Stadium after games and only have it out there for games, then people couldn't view it from time to time. You'd have to raise it up. Maybe there would be certain hours that it could come up out of this subterranean vault or whatever you call it. I think it's something that you have to address. And like I said, Clemson is one of the few teams out there that have something else like this. When the Oaks at Toomer's Corner were damaged and eventually killed by Updike, Harvey Updike. I always want to call him Lee Harvey Oswald Updike for that. But when you think about that, and we said here on the show that it's terrible, and I talked to some of my good friends at Auburn about it, but when you have oak trees, they could have been hit by lightning at some point. And I guess in some way, shape, or form, I should have considered the fact that the Rock could have been hit by lightning. I don't know how lightning would have affected the Rock. But obviously, those Bulldogs, those English Bulldogs, they die a great bit. If you have a living, live tradition, the odds are at some point it's going to go away. Maybe not in my lifetime, maybe not in my son's lifetime, but maybe in my grandson or great-grandson's lifetimes. Those traditions, like the Oaks at Toomer's Corner, were going to go away. They were going to succumb to nature. The Rock, however, being protected from, I guess, erosion, certainly would have been something that should have lasted without any further damage after 1992. But we let our guard down, and if you can think of anybody else or any other schools that have something similar to the Rock that could be damaged, Let me know what it is, because I can't think of any really that are on display. And that's one of the cool things. Certainly, if you have statues outside of your stadium, if you're talking about at Auburn, whether it's the Cam Newton statue or the Bo Jackson statue, all the Heisman Trophy winners, they get statues outside the stadium. If it's that's one thing. But what else, or what other schools have anything like the Rock? And that's what makes the tradition so amazing. And there are going to be people who are not going to like this next statement, but I sat around for a while, and I know that if people believe this was a South Carolina Gamecock, and I'm not going to accuse the Gamecocks or the Bulldogs or the Duke Blue Devils. It doesn't matter who I think or who I would like to think maybe did this, so that maybe we could be a little bit more fired up about game number one, maybe if we thought it was the Georgia Bulldogs or some of their faithful. I'm not going to go there. But I started to thinking, Gamecock fans aren't going to like this at all. I started thinking, I knew that some Clemson fans had gone out and done a little spray painting, perhaps, and as I said here on the program, I didn't think a Clemson fan in their right mind would have painted that hatchet job in Columbia on the field at Williams-Brice, but also on the cockabooses. But what is similar to it at South Carolina? Is there anything? Is there any level of vandalism at Williams-Brice Stadium that a Clemson fan could do that would be on par with Howard's Rock? I'll leave you with that. G-Dog General Dentistry at Oak Grove is located on Highway 1 near the Barnyard Flea Market. Modern, relaxing dentistry with TVs and headphones in every room, nitrous and even oral sedation. Digital diagnostic x-rays for better quality and 85% less radiation exposure. And check out their new Clemson Patient Special. Mention that you heard about G-Dog here on the Clemson Sports Talk programs and receive an extra 5% off all services. If you don't have a regular dentist, go see my dentist, Dr. Rick Jackson at G-Dog. That's General Dentistry at Oak Grove. A winning team requires having great team members. If you're a landowner interested in selling timber or are considering buying or selling land, call the winning team of Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty, LLC today. Put the knowledge and skills of professional licensed foresters and realtors to work for your team. To learn more about services offered by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty, LLC, visit www.crosscreektimber.com and easily follow the link to real estate or reach them by phone 864-517-3620 or 864-517-3621. Clemson Sports Talk fans, let us help you. With rates starting as low as $100 a month, you can advertise with us through July 2013. We are currently seeking additional advertisers and would love to help you spread the word about your business. Email us clemson81@gmail.com for additional information. Sponsors will receive an ad during the show and a link and logo in the weekly show notes on TigerNet and on the front page of ClemsonSportsTalk.com. Take your business to the Clemson fans around the world with us, ClemsonSportsTalk.com.
The 1988 season was a great year for the Clemson Tigers, finishing 10-2 with a win over Oklahoma in the Citrus Bowl. But it was a better year for Clemson fans. That season, Tigertown Graphics became your source for custom tees, promotional items, and embroidery. Conveniently located in the heart of downtown Clemson, their retail store proudly displays Clemson shirts that are designed and printed directly on site. Whether you're looking for the latest Clemson t-shirts or ordering products for your school, organization, or business, Tigertown Graphics can help with all of your t-shirt needs. Find them online at www.tigertowngraphics.com. A Clemson tradition since 1988.
I thought I'd grow up and I'd settle down. There was 10,000 girls up in Tigertown, and it was heaven to me.
Rolling right along here on TigerNet Talk, presented by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty. Check them out online at www.crosscreektimber.com and www.crosscreekrealtyllc.com. Our man Chris, he's at CU Tailgater on Twitter, dropped out of the chat room. He says, I can't get back in. I'm not sure what's going on, Chris. I apologize for that. And the funny thing about that could be, from Chris's perspective, is he's a guy who likes to watch the show on the Spreecast app on his iPhone. So you know what? No matter where you go, no matter what you do, you can always catch our Clemson Sports Talk program, TigerNet Talk, right here on the go on the Spreecast app, so check that out. Chase Bell on Twitter, he's at ChaseBell9, said, don't worry, I just downloaded at Clemson Sports to my podcast. Long overdue. Yes, thank you, Chase, for being a loyal follower of the program and finally getting to the podcast version of the show, which is obviously a great way to listen to this program if you get that opportunity. A couple of thoughts from the chat room. Brent says he likes the idea about the rock coming up out of the ground during certain hours, and I should hope, Brent, that with the engineering programs over at Clemson, plus some of the turf grass management, some of the things there, I don't know who all would be involved in building a subterranean vault underneath the hill. I'm assuming it could be done, and for all I know, perhaps there is some sort of walkway underneath the stadium. I know that there are lots of underground tunnels throughout campus. That would be pretty neat, though, if we could find a way to pull that off. And again, having it rise up at certain hours, perhaps maybe for a few hours a day, and then you don't have to employ a full-time security guard. But I figure Clemson fans would probably be willing to have the ticket price bumped up $1 a ticket just to pay for a guy to stand there and guard it, maybe 2 or 3 guys. I don't know what it takes. I don't know if they have to be armed guards, though. I think just having somebody there on watch would probably be enough. Keith wants to know, why was there no security at the Rock? Keith, man, there never has really been. I thought the biggest concern for me was that there wasn't a true video camera watching the Rock. And, you know, Clemson has a lot of cameras. I forget if it's like the Eyes on Clemson, and you can see Bowman Field, if you want to go see Tillman Hall, or you want to view some construction projects on campus, you can do that. It's hard for me to believe that of all the things at Clemson that you could have a camera on, and, you know, I think the Clemson extension may even have like some Madagascar cockroaches or something that you can watch, for crying out loud. But you would think that in some way, shape, or form, the Rock would have been one thing you could have been watching. Now, whether or not that could have prevented things from occurring the way they did, I don't believe that's the case. I just don't think that if someone were sitting at home watching somebody roll up to the Rock, that they would have had time to call the Clemson University Police Department and put a stop to it before the Rock was already vandalized. Now, could that chunk have been saved that broke off? Yes. Could it have been repaired? Would you want it repaired? That's another argument many people have had. Do you take this chunk if you find it? Do you take it on the road and have this portable Howard's Rock that you take and rub before you run out to an opponent's field? That's something that some people have thought about, a miniature version. I know they sell them. A lot of people have them out at their tailgates. I've seen them before. They look just like the Rock, the pedestal and everything. So to be honest with you, I don't know why there wasn't. I honestly don't know why there wasn't more security there, but certainly I think we all think that there should have been, and so many people just devastated by the news. Speaking of devastating news, and this doesn't have anything to do with Clemson per se, but James Gandolfini, if you are a big fan of The Sopranos, passed away today. That just took me. I had a stroke, I believe it was. Those are the most recent reports I read. 51 years old, and The Sopranos, of course, such a great program that HBO put out for so many years. I really fell in love with that show. One of the few shows. There have been some along the way, but my thoughts are with his family and friends, obviously. A big loss for not just those folks, but for the fans of The Sopranos who hoped that maybe they were going to put a movie together at some point, that hoped that maybe that show might get a second run, another reprieve. So kind of sad news there, definitely, for anybody who loves that program. And I'm sure some people in the chat room at least had seen the show, or at least knew of the show. Now, not that long ago, a little over a week ago, I put out a tweet about it. Is there a program out there that people think is more dirty than Auburn? They have such a serious reputation right now. And John Ansberry said, how about UNC? John, UNC's right there in the boat with Auburn for a couple of reasons. One, that I think UNC racks up there right alongside Auburn, maybe even more for some people, is because UNC is that wine and cheese crowd, the tea and crumpets, and they want to be better than thou, and they're kind of like Harvard or Yale. They try to be a little bit better than everybody else in the Atlantic Coast Conference, and then you find out of all the scandals that they had with the athletic department and the academics, everything that's gone on there, whether it be the John Blake situation and everything that happened with that scenario under the former head coach Butch Davis there. I mean, you talk about a program, John, I think you make a great point. Auburn, I wouldn't say that they've ever really come out and carried themselves, like the better, above anybody else, kind of that high society type group. I mean, I think when you start looking at the SEC for those type fans, you're probably looking at the Vanderbilt fans. I would assume they kind of carry themselves that way. The Ole Miss fans, kind of that old South Southern money style. Back in the 1800s, I believe there were more millionaires per capita in Mississippi than anywhere else in the world. And, they still throw on the bow ties. Clemson Tom might not like me saying something bad about a bow tie, but, they throw on the bow ties. They go down to the Grove. They do upscale tailgating with chandeliers. Maybe they think of themselves a little bit more than others. I mean, face it, you go to LSU, you're not seeing a whole lot of that, okay? You're lucky if anybody's wearing a T-shirt. Everybody, I mean, it's a rough crowd at LSU if you're talking about a night game. But so when you look at programs like that and their perspective, whether they cheat, whether they don't, you start to think UNC and the way they kind of build their reputation. John Swofford, the commissioner of the Atlantic Coast Conference, being a Tar Heel himself. John, I'm going to agree with you. I think when you look at the ACC, Miami, people expect it. You talk Nevin Shapiro and everything at Miami, people expect that. Clemson's stayed fairly clean. UNC, though, again, that upper crust, the people that are better than thou, however, continually being hit. So that's a great point, John, and I appreciate you responding to us there on Twitter. Dan Radakovich, Clemson University Athletic Director, has been selected, or I should say named, to an Athletic Director Advisory Group that will meet with President Mark Emmert. Dan Radakovich already made a name for himself at other stops, LSU, Georgia Tech. Clearly a big, major fundraiser guy, a guy who I think Clemson, when they brought him in, hoped would continue to increase the funds that were coming in the door. And that leads us right into Dale's question. Dale says, why is the AD, Dan Radakovich, dragging his feet on Phase 3 of the West Zone project? It was to have been completed at the end of the 2011 season. And Dale, the things we know about the West Zone are this. The way it is now is a million times better than the way it was in 1995. The changes that have been made have already begun making a significant impact on recruiting. Now, that has nothing to do with the outdoor facility as well, the outdoor practice facility. The indoor practice facility, which allows Clemson to not have to practice outdoors when there's bad weather. Dabo Swinney's been able to host some of his camps. It's a big, nice facility to show off. It equalizes Clemson a little bit with the SEC and maybe puts Clemson ahead of most teams in the Atlantic Coast Conference when it comes to the indoor practice facility for your football team. I mean, that's state-of-the-art, top-notch. And I just wonder if, and I don't know this for a fact, but I wonder if some of that dedication that Clemson put into that practice facility took away from some of what Clemson was going to do to the West Zone. Now, does that mean the West Zone is done? No, I'm not saying that's the case, but I do think that because the West Zone hasn't been nearly the major need that it was, because what we have now is gorgeous. Anything else you do to it is just putting bells and whistles and the icing on the cake. But I think it is an exciting time for Clemson fans because you're starting to see the impact of this on recruiting. You're starting to see the fan base, I think, realizing that there is a dedication to this football program further than what we had 10, 15 years ago. You can see it in the way Clemson has improved through the years, and that for me is the thing that I take away from it all. It doesn't matter where we focus our money. Do we put it into building that indoor practice facility? Do we put it in fixing the West Zone? And I know those monies are separate, but clearly the focus for the past year, 2 years has been completing that indoor practice facility, because that is a showcase item above that third phase to the West Zone. But something else has happened over at the West Zone that's exciting a lot of people. We'll tell you about that when we get back, and also some news on recruiting right here on TigerNet Talk, presented by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty.
Games are the best on the banks of those late fall, late cartwheel sunsets. I wanted to be just like Jeff Davis when I grew up, tackling Seminoles and Bulldogs, playing football in the mud. So everybody sing Tiger Rag at the top of your lungs, and we'll party like it's 1981.
Do you suffer from a chronic case of the woohoo during football games? Do your Saturdays sound something a bit like this? Well, TigerNet Talk is out to fix that. If we can band together, we can change this reoccurring issue. With a simple Go Tigers, Go Tigers Go, you can make a difference. Ban the woohoo. Do yourself a favor. And as always, Go Tigers. A winning team requires having great team members. If you're a landowner interested in selling timber or are considering buying or selling land, call the winning team of Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty, LLC today. Put the knowledge and skills of professional, licensed foresters and realtors to work for your team. To learn more about the forestry and real estate services offered by Cross Creek Timber, call 864-517-3620 and Cross Creek Realty, LLC at 864-517-3621. Or visit www.crosscreektimber.com and easily follow the link to real estate. G-Dog General Dentistry at Oak Grove is located on Highway 1 near the Barnyard Flea Market. Modern, relaxing dentistry with TVs and headphones in every room, nitrous and even oral sedation. Digital diagnostic x-rays for better quality and 85% less radiation exposure. And check out their new Clemson Patient Special. Mention that you heard about G-Dog here on the Clemson Sports Talk programs and receive an extra 5% off all services. If you don't have a regular dentist, go see my dentist, Dr. Rick Jackson at G-Dog. That's General Dentistry at Oak Grove.
There's something about looking and feeling classy that everyone enjoys. Check out Edisto Outdoors, an apparel brand inspired by our southern animals and environment. These shirts feature soft touch prints that will keep you looking your best in all types of weather. Look for Edisto Outdoors, coming soon to many fine retailers across the state, or visit www.edistooutdoors.com. Technical, comfortable, livable.
Blake Austin of South Carolina Farm Bureau is an insurance agent you can count on to meet all your needs. Home, auto, health, life, you name it, Blake's got you covered, and he can save you on your yearly rates. Call him now for a free quote, 803-259-5008. That's 803-259-5008. Or just go to ClemsonSportsTalk.com and click on the Farm Bureau logo to be connected to Blake. Do like I do and work with the best agent around, and you can tweet that.
We turned up, we run down the hill, we so turned up. Run the rock, hit the field, no competition, we first up. Offense is too fast, defense ain't scared, boy. Line up against me, we drop you on your head, boy. Death Valley be jumping, whole stadium pumping. Best fans in the whole nation, and damn right we love them. C-L-E-M-S-O-N, we Clemson, we ballin', we all in.
Welcome back in to TigerNet Talk. Thank you for being here. I'm your host, Lawton Swan. 803-450-0086 is the way you can take part in the program. That number is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, though. That's the key. You're driving around, you're listening to the podcast, you say, oh, man, I didn't catch this show. I didn't catch it live on Wednesday night. So what do? I can't call in. I think what he just said was utterly ridiculous. I can't say anything to let him know that. No, you can. You can do that. I mean, if you think,
Well, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard of.
give me a call. That's all you have to do. Leave a message. Tell me what you think. and then we'll play it back in the show the next time. You can also go to ClemsonSportsTalk.com. There's a voicemail feature. You can leave it right there, so I hope that you'll join me there as well. Thank you to everybody for being with us. Clemson81@gmail.com is the email address, and you can follow us on Twitter. We're at Clemson Sports. We are the Waffle House of Clemson Sports, scattered, smothered, and most importantly, covered for you each and every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We put out about 4 major tweets a day with 5 or so links in there just to keep you up and keep you in tune with everything that's going on in Tiger Town. Thank you to everybody for being here with us. Andy, somebody named me. I guess I'm with myself. Mike, Chris, Keith, Trey, a bunch of guests, everybody that's involved with the program, and everybody who downloads the show on a weekly basis. Thank you for being here. Well, we talked about how recruiting has been affected. 4-star linebacker Kendall Joseph of Belton Honeypath has committed to Clemson as well. He's the 3rd linebacker in this class that Clemson has. And, of course, so many people, and I say has, and I use that term loosely. Okay, I do use that term loosely. Why? Because I have learned through the years with recruiting that you have to take all of it with a grain of salt. I think it's important that you all realize that. But he's the 3rd linebacker in this recruiting class so far. You've got Corey Rogers, another 4-star linebacker. Chris Register, 3-star, maybe a 4-star by some outlets. So you've got some top-notch linebackers. And the guy that so many people are really keeping their eye on right now is Raekwon McMillan. Now, McMillan says that currently leading for him is Alabama and, of course, Ohio State. If you recall, head coach Urban Meyer at Ohio State had this to say about Raekwon McMillan.
I like big butts and I cannot lie.
That's right. He said that when he saw this kid, he liked his big butt because the butt reminded him of some of the great players that he's had in his career, and that butt that Raekwon McMillan had just reminded him so much of the other great athletes that he's had in his career, whether it was at Ohio State or at Florida. One of the more odd comments that we've had come out during this sort of downtime, the dark days of summer, if you will. But certainly when you start thinking about Urban Meyer and his evaluation of talent, the one thing we've seen and we've noted here on the show recently is that when you talk about the guys that Clemson has committed, whether you're looking at the 2014 class or the 2015 class, you're continually seeing Clemson in the mix with a number of great teams, and sometimes guys that Clemson offer almost immediately you're seeing some of the follow-up offers come from the Ohio States. So that means one thing to me is that, again, going back to what we said earlier, we've got things headed in the right direction, and I think there has to be a bit of a concern at this point if you're a Clemson fan and you're hoping to land McMillan, because look, there's a lot of relationships coming out of the state of Georgia in that next recruiting class that obviously have a lot of people excited. I mean, whether you're talking about Deshaun Watson and who he can convince to bring on board with him, maybe it's Milan Richard, whoever you want to talk about, and the guys over in Georgia and the job that Clemson's doing, one name that's going to continually pop up for people is Raekwon McMillan, and can Clemson convince him to come in? But now with 3 linebackers already on this team, and I'm not saying that he would be fearful of not getting playing time, because, look, if I'm a kid, I want the competition. Competition makes you better. I think linebacker at Clemson will be a position that down the road is going to have plenty of opportunity, because we had that big group come in just a couple of years ago. These guys who come in this next class will have an opportunity to play early in their career if they can prove it on the field. I think there's plenty of opportunity there for these young, talented guys who will be joining Clemson, assuming they sign in February, unless there are early enrollees. But is there too much traffic right now at the linebacker spot? Is there too much competition? And unless somebody else falls off or falls to the wayside, does Clemson still sit in third? And does that have anything to do with it? Now, obviously, the SEC schools have been in McMillan's ear about Clemson and the defense, and saying how a lot of the guys who are going, I think his quote was even that most of the guys who are from Georgia and committed to Clemson right now are on the offensive side of the ball. Well, if we score 70 points, what if we're giving up 40 a game? That is the type of propaganda that you're going to constantly deal with when you're the Clemsons of the world, and you had a game that's still haunting you, like the Orange Bowl. And I'll throw it out to you in the chat room just to get your thoughts on it. Do the comments by Raekwon McMillan concern you in regards to what maybe other players, other defensive players out there think about our program? When you start looking at building a solid defense, I think we all know the main place to start is that defensive front because it makes everybody better. But are you concerned at all with these comments and the realization that 70-33 in the Orange Bowl is still hanging over your head at this point? You would have thought that maybe beating LSU the way you did to come down to it at the final moments to get that 4th and 16, to pick up that 25-24 win over an SEC team, to see those LSU guys wearing down in the second half, the way Clemson's defense played outside of a couple of plays against LSU. I thought Clemson's defense played really well in that game as well. But you're still hearing people reaching back into that old bag of the 70 points scored against Clemson, the games where Clemson maybe outscores opponents 52-45 or whatever you have, whatever the score may be in any given game. Does that concern you when you start talking about building the future for this Clemson Tiger team on the defensive side of the ball? Because I think it has to be something that you think about. Chris in the chat room, Chris says, I don't think so. He doesn't think it's a big deal. Also, Mike in the chat room says if we keep improving on defense, it'll take care of itself this year. And Mike, Mike says just win, baby, Al Davis style. And I agree, Mike. I think that's something that you've got to have in the back of your mind, that ultimately if you give up 28 points a game but you score 29 points a game and you win every single ball game, nobody in Clemson is going to go, man, our defense was terrible. Everybody in Clemson is going to go, how about those Tigers, national champions? But the problem is when you're trying to sell your program right now, this program is still being sold off the flash of the offense. The speed, the quickness, the plays that are run, the go for the throat mentality that we have offensively has yet to carry over to the defensive side of the field. And one has to wonder, when you start looking at this offense and the games that Clemson has won, the games Clemson loses are the games where we get 65 plays, 67 plays. The games Clemson wins are 85 and up. You start getting into that range, Clemson's going to win ball games. The offense is clicking. Things are going good. Chad Morris has things running very fast and efficiently from the sidelines to the field, to the huddle, to the snap. Defensively, however, you're out there more frequently. Your numbers are boosted to some degree. Oregon, you got to give them credit. They have a fast-paced team. Their defense throughout the years has been amazing. Amazing. And it's not that their defense is so good at getting 3 and outs. Their defense turns you over. And part of the reason they turn you over is because the offense puts you behind the 8 ball early. Remember, Oregon's a team. We could talk about how wild and crazy Clemson's offense can be at times, how dynamic they can be, spreading the ball around, multiple formations, multiple guys getting the football, whether it's Sammy Watkins at the running back position or a reverse pass that's wide open to Taj Boyd. All the crazy things you've seen throughout the short term of Chad Morris. The one thing that you did see from Chip Kelly out at Oregon, a little bit of a difference, was a little bit more of a chance-taking team. Oregon's a team in the national championship game, they'll score a touchdown and go for 2. You know, they immediately try to throw you behind an 8 ball, and some people say that's crazy, that's wackadoo, but there was a high school coach out in Arkansas, perhaps Texas, just a couple of years ago. He never, listen to this, he never kicked the ball off. He always kicked it on sides. And he never punted. He always went for it on 4th down. And this guy was killing people. He used statistical data and analysis to realize that the odds were better to just go for it on 4th down every time. Now, this is high school. To go for it on 4th down and to kick the ball on sides over and over. All game, every game. And he's putting up 70 points, 80 points against people. Really got criticized for running the score up on some people, but that was his game plan. They weren't going to punt, and they were never going to kick off. That meant a couple of things. You never gave up a punt return, and you never gave up a kickoff return either. It took that aspect of the game away from your opponent, and certainly it's crazy to think about, but it's something that's worked. But as far as Chad Morris, a little bit more conservative in that regard. And I'm not saying Clemson should ever go that far with it, but obviously more conservative than what Chip Kelly was out at Oregon. So that's something I think you kind of got to keep your eye on. But clearly still, when you talk about Clemson, the defense, is that the case? Is there still that selling point out there to recruits that if you go to Clemson, you're not going to play on a great defense? And maybe we all need to give Brent Venables some time, but that's hard. That's hard for these 17, 18-year-old kids to digest because they're just looking strictly at the numbers game. Most of them probably don't even realize that last year was Brent Venables' first year at Clemson. You have to go out and actively recruit that knowledge. You have to go out and actually seek that knowledge if you're a player. And I don't know that these guys are doing that. They're just taking what's going in their ear, believing it, and buying into it. But it's one of the reasons, too, that Clemson can sell the offense. It's one of the reasons that Deshaun Watson is invested in Clemson, and that is that dynamic offense that he's seen. And it's part of the reason that if there's a team that maybe many people fear still, and even though Watson has continued to say that he is committed to Clemson still, that Auburn, Cam Newton, Gus Malzahn relationship has a lot of Clemson people always kind of keeping their eyes peeled. You know, you got to have eyes in the back of your head. I remember when I was a kid, my dad would always tell me that about Johnny George, the golf pro at the golf course. That's why I couldn't drive the cart underage, because Mr. George had eyes in the back of his head. Well, we need to have eyes in the back of our heads because we've seen Auburn come in late on a bunch of people in recent years. Carl Lawson, Montravius Adams, pull them away. We'll see how it goes the rest of the way. Stay with us here on TigerNet Talk.
The 1988 season was a great year for the Clemson Tigers, finishing 10-2 with a win over Oklahoma in the Citrus Bowl. But it was a better year for Clemson fans. That season, Tigertown Graphics became your source for custom tees, promotional items, and embroidery. Conveniently located in the heart of downtown Clemson, their retail store proudly displays Clemson shirts that are designed and printed directly on site. Whether you're looking for the latest Clemson t-shirts or ordering products for your school, organization, or business, Tigertown Graphics can help with all of your t-shirt needs. Find them online at www.tigertowngraphics.com. A Clemson tradition since 1988.
Blake Austin of South Carolina Farm Bureau is an insurance agent you can count on to meet all your needs. Home, auto, health, life, you name it, Blake's got you covered, and he can save you on your yearly rates. Call him now for a free quote, 803-259-5008. That's 803-259-5008. Or just go to ClemsonSportsTalk.com and click on the Farm Bureau logo to be connected to Blake. Do like I do and work with the best agent around, and you can tweet that. A winning team requires having great team members. If you're a landowner interested in selling timber or are considering buying or selling land, call the winning team of Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty, LLC today. Put the knowledge and skills of professional licensed foresters and realtors to work for your team. To learn more about services offered by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty, LLC, visit www.crosscreektimber.com and easily follow the link to real estate or reach them by phone 864-517-3620 or 864-517-3621.
There's something about looking and feeling classy that everyone enjoys. Check out Edisto Outdoors, an apparel brand inspired by our southern animals and environment. These shirts feature soft-touch prints that will keep you looking your best in all types of weather. Look for Edisto Outdoors, coming soon to many fine retailers across the state, or visit www.edistooutdoors.com. Technical, comfortable, livable.
This is Clemson Tom, and you're listening to Clemson Sports Talk. So sit down and have you a cold one and listen to a true American.
Driving down Clemson Boulevard.
TigerNet Talk presented by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty. Thank you so much to them for being a part of the program, and thank you to you for joining us each and every Wednesday. We will be here next Wednesday night, 9 p.m., kicking off the show, and hopefully we'll have some good news for you about the future of our program by that point. So stick with us for that. We're looking forward to hopefully having a great summer and on into the college football season. Talking about Clemson's recruiting real quick, let me give you the rankings. ESPN has Clemson's class at number 10 in the country. Rivals has them at number 9. Scout has Clemson at number 13. 7 of ESPN's top 300 right now committed to the Clemson Tigers. So only Florida State, who is at 5 in America right now, according to ESPN, is ahead of Clemson. So good news there on that front, always in competition with the Florida State Seminoles. Now, you never want to be excited about players who are injured, but you probably heard the news just a couple of days ago. Georgia lost their second defensive secondary starter, Reggie Wilkerson. Of course, they lost Josh Harvey Clemens for the season opener as well against Clemson because of a suspension, and now the guy who was backing him up goes down. So another injury. This was an ACL injury, so he obviously will not be back for the Clemson game. Harvey Clemens, of course, suspended for the Clemson game, so Georgia having to move down the depth chart just a little bit further as they head into Death Valley, August 31st, 2013. I was down at the beach, as I mentioned, and there were 2 golf carts. I put this out on Twitter almost side by side, a Clemson golf cart and a Georgia golf cart. You know, the day is coming. It will not be long. And I know I told you the other week we were still trying to get up with Jamie Harper. I know he's had some tryouts recently for some NFL teams, and he's been pretty busy. So we're still trying to get him lined up for you. Hopefully Jamie Harper will be with us, though, before the summer months are up. Man, some questions have come into the chat room. Keith says, did you hear where certain SEC coaches are saying that the hurry-up, no-huddle offense is unfair and want to stop it? Yeah, that's been an issue that Nick Saban has had some contention with for quite a while, and when I think about that from Nick Saban's perspective, and you look at what Clemson did against LSU, you see what Texas A&M, who's not really as fast-paced as Clemson, but clearly a guy who's been in the news for wackadoo stuff off the field. Thank goodness my quarterback is Taj Boyd and not Johnny Manziel. Can I just say that real quick? Thank goodness that's our quarterback and not Johnny Manziel. What an embarrassment that kid would be. I'll throw that to you. Tweet to us, #TNTalk. If Johnny Manziel was the quarterback at Clemson, would you have your head in the sand? Because I certainly would. I would be so embarrassed that my Heisman Trophy candidate carried himself off the field like a complete nincompoop. I mean, a disaster. I just don't even understand what's wrong with Johnny Manziel.
Did you eat a lot of paint chips when you were a kid? Why?
You would think this kid would understand the spotlight is on him, and at every turn, somebody's going to find every fault that you have. And when you continue to accentuate those, when you continue to put yourself out there for people, it's awful. Thank goodness Taj Boyd is going to be under center at Clemson next year and not Johnny Manziel. And I know that some people had him ranked as the #1 player in the country. And I know you guys know who I think is the #1 player in the country. You won't like my opinion on it, but I truly believe the best player in America plays football in Williams-Brice Stadium. And I'm not talking about in late November. I mean each and every game. I truly believe that that South Carolina and Jadeveon Clowney have the #1 player in the country. And you can poo-poo that thought if you want. You could say you're out of your mind. You'd trade for him in a heartbeat. You'd have gladly taken him on that Valentine's Day a few years ago. Now you got to go at him every time, and that's fine with me. But that's the #1 player in America, Jadeveon Clowney, and it's not even close. It's not even close. But when you talk about the SEC and the teams like Nick Saban and the coaches who fear perhaps that fast-paced offense, there's clearly something to it. And there's the reason that not that long ago when Tommy Bowden was the head coach and Rich Rodriguez was the offensive coordinator, Rodriguez had that system where we'd run players on real quick, and the NCAA quickly changed that. Unfortunately, though, for Nick Saban, there's nothing against the rules about what we are currently doing. And it's to the advantage of those hurry-up, no-huddle teams because Saban can't make all the changes he wants. He is a defensive guru, and coaches like Chad Morris have found a way, whether it's using a card system, a number system, a picture of Barack Obama with Governor Haley on the back, whatever you go with, to win ball games and to get things in quicker and quicker. So it's pretty impressive as to what the offensive gurus have been able to do to even the score a little bit. Now, earlier in the show, I talked about another improvement that's coming to the West Zone. How about this? Well-deserved. A bust of Danny Ford is going to be put in to the West Zone. It was sculpted by Zan Wells. She's a Clemson graduate. She makes a lot of statues in downtown Greenville. This is a picture of Danny Ford wearing his old-school Block C hat. You'll recognize his little smirk there on his face. You could almost picture him with a little piece of grass, maybe chewing on some grass, spitting some tobacco, whatever he was doing on the sidelines for so many games. And hopefully this is something, as you kind of look through the article that was on Greenville Online. I believe it was written by Bart Wright. And if you go through there and read that, you'll find out a little bit more about the whole situation. But David Wilkins, chairman of the board at Clemson, talks about the process that has to be gone through. We all believe here on this show, the guy that sits in this chair and talks into this microphone believes that the two names that are not in the Ring of Honor, that should be in the Ring of Honor today, not tomorrow, today, are Danny Ford and Jim Phillips. And those of you that say, well, Danny's name is up there with the national championship title team, that's an insult to Danny Ford, to be honest with you. It's an insult to me that that's been done that way. His name should be taken down from under the national championship team and put up on its own. And there's no mistaking that fact. And the further along we go, and Danny Ford was the youngest head coach to ever win a national championship. 33 years of age, he was the head coach when Clemson won the national championship. I ask you, what were you doing at 33? Probably not coaching the national championship team. But the longer we let this go, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, eventually Danny Ford's not going to be here. Eventually Danny Ford's not going to be able to get that recognition while he is alive. And that's probably the one thing that saddens me the most, that we continue to drag our feet about this. And it's not you, the Clemson fans, because if the Clemson fans had their way, it would be done right now. The scaffolding, whatever it takes to get it up there, would be taking place. Certainly, Danny Ford and Jim Phillips deserve that honor. Hopefully, they will get it. And that's really all I have to say about it. It's a step in the right direction to get his bust in the West Zone, but the man deserves much more. He deserves a statue outside the stadium. And I think you could say the same thing for Frank Howard. Frank Howard, somebody made a great point the other day on TigerNet. Look at Frank Howard's number of home games that he coached in his career at Clemson. Wasn't many. I think the most home games he coached in one season was 5. Most of the time, he was coaching more than half of his games on the road every single season. Not the most stellar record at all for Coach Frank Howard, but a legendary head coach that deserves the exact same as Danny Ford does, I believe. And Howard's already got a bust. He's already got a bust in the West Zone. That's where this idea came from for Danny Ford. But those two, in my mind, if you're putting statues outside of the stadium at some point, those two guys deserve it as well. And I don't know that you find many people out there who would disagree with that statement. And we're getting ready to get out here, but I want to leave you with one thing, one final thought here on the program as we head into another week of Clemson Tiger sports. What do you think about this? We've talked recruiting. We've talked about some dirty teams. I see David Bishop in the chat room. David, thank you for being here. David says, time for Auburn to go back on probation again. The NCAA may have cut them a break because they felt sorry for losing their trees to some Bammer idiot, but I think the NCAA will be on the plane soon. And, David, this is not necessarily having to do with Auburn. We told this story, though, before about the Auburn coach driving up in a truck. And I'm going to unfairly point my finger here without knowing for sure, but many people would probably assume it may have been a guy like Trooper Taylor. But how about a Clemson coach or another coach in the Atlantic Coast Conference, I should say, knowing that Auburn drove up and said basically, what I put on the table the final day, you won't be able to match. Now, I heard that on a radio show as I was driving a few weeks back, and the story was being told, and it was apparently an Auburn assistant who said that to this coach. It may not have been a Clemson coach. I don't remember exactly the entire gist of the story outside of what we put on the table the final day you can't match. But here's something I want to leave you with. What do you think about high school coaches who target schools? Pipeline schools, where perhaps the head coach is a fan of South Carolina, perhaps a fan of North Carolina, perhaps a fan of Clemson, perhaps a fan of Georgia Tech. It doesn't matter who the coach is a fan of. What do you think about coaches in high school who direct their players perhaps towards other schools, keep them away from somebody else? Do you have a major problem with that? It's something I want you to think about. It's good when the guys are coming your way, but it can be terrible when things go the other way, because there can be a great kid out there, and if a coach at a high school doesn't let Clemson's recruiters know, if rivals or scout or 24/7 don't find out about that kid, Clemson may never know about him until it's too late. And do you think it's possible that some of those high school coaches, maybe they're getting paid to direct players to certain schools? I'll leave you with that thought. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Clemson81@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter. We're at Clemson Sports, and tweet to us. #TNTalk. Until next time, thank you so much for being here with us. A power hour of Tiger Sports Talk right here on TigerNet Talk, presented by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty. We'll see you next Wednesday at 9 p.m. And until then, y'all take care now. And go Tigers!